Video games sure do like pitting players against cults, don't they? Through decor, enemies, and lots of blood, there are some hugely memorable cults from the history of gaming. We're taking a look at some of the most terrifying cults the games show us in their many incarnations. The Venatori of Dragon Age Inquisition aren't a cult in service to an existing god. Instead, they're a cult dedicated to bringing a brand new god to life. That's terrifying in and of itself, but the strange corruption they spread around them and the potential future in which they're ushering in the end of days makes the Venatori all the more creepy. In most games, cults have a tendency to be the antagonistic force you're fighting against. The same is true of the 1997 shooter Blood, but there's a twist. You were once a member of this cult. The Cabal is controlled by an ancient god called the Chernobog, also known as the Devourer of Souls. You play as Caleb, a sadistic, quip-spouting badass who is taking revenge on the cult and Chernobog for betraying him and killing his love interest, Ophelia. As seems typical of video game cults, the Cabal wants to raise an evil army of the undead to take over the world in their god's name. Adding to the creepy factor, the cultists act as an endless supply of bodies for Chernobog to inhabit before their empty carcasses are tossed aside.
You defile this place!
When a cult is feared, even by their fellow splicers, you know you've got a pretty messed up group on your hands. The Saturnine is a cult obsessed with a bizarre and bloody form of pagan worship.
Please. They drink human blood and chant, "Harness the flame, harness the mist," and believe they're touched by the ancient god.
Now, the inhabitants of Rapture were already a pretty cultish lot. For a splinter group of splicers to then start a cult within a cult just shows off the lunacy of the Saturnine. Among the most terrifying enemies you'll encounter in the original Bioshock,
It's those goddamn fanatics!
the Saturnine like to consume plasmids spiked with human blood. And those antler masks are just the creepy cherry on top.
I'll take the girl.
Resident Evil 4 marked a big departure in tone from previous entries in the series. This was mainly thanks to the introduction of the Los Illuminados cult. This nefarious group isn't just scary because of the parasites they use to transform people into mindless abominations. It's also due to their clear, comprehensible goals. Unlike the shambling zombies of old, they aren't simply evil for evil's sake. Instead, they feel like smart and dangerous opponents with a supernatural punch.
I will help you awaken from your world of cliches.
You're pathetic.
Silent Hill has always been big on hounding the player with horrifying cults, but the third entry brings the Order front and center. This insidious cult is after you, but you directly fight very few of their members. Rather, the true horror is witnessing the corruption of the eponymous town and realizing that the cultists consider this to be the paradise they've always sought. The Order is a particularly dangerous cult because of their core beliefs. They follow a philosophy of moral nihilism and do not consider good or evil to be real things. When you're dealing with a group so free of moral boundaries, there's no knowing the depths of depravity which they're truly capable of. For much of Breath of Fire 2, the Church of St. Eva doesn't seem like anything but a benevolent religion devoted to helping those in need. However, it is eventually revealed that this church that took you in so many times is part of something far more sinister. The Church of St. Eva is a front for a demon lord who uses the churchgoers' prayers to empower him in preparing for a hellish uprising. This cult is unique in that its members weren't even aware that they were worshipping an evil entity. The truth behind St. Eva's is one of the most underappreciated twists in gaming, and the creepy cult is something that has stuck with many players since. Often in games, cults have a tendency to threaten terrible catastrophes without actually following through. Oblivion's Order of the Mythic Dawn is not one such cult. During their time in the 4th Elder Scrolls game, the Order of the Mythic Dawn inflicts terrible damage to Tamriel. They tear open portals through the eponymous realm of Oblivion and come within an inch of destroying everything. One of the scariest aspects of the Mythic Dawn is also their members' idea of heaven. Paradise is a specifically created realm of Oblivion inhabited by deceased cult members. However, the dead souls of the Mythic Dawn resent their old lives, as now they suffer an eternity of being killed over and over again for the pleasure of the sadistic Daedra. Sometimes, cults aren't horrifying because they're evil. The Treeminders of Fallout aren't antagonistic to the player. In fact, they aren't really hurting anyone, except the subject of their devotion. The Treeminders worship a sentient tree named Harold, who begs for death.
Would you please kill me?
They live out happy lives tending to Harold, hearing his pleas as a spiritual test. In some ways, the Treeminders are the scariest cult on the list. Their enthusiasm for misinterpreting their subject of worship is a thinly veiled satire of our own world's cults, whose terrible actions can have very real consequences.
Go, but never forget the gifts the Great One bestowed upon us.
We shall be free once more. Altruism.
Last but not least are the Alturists of Grand Theft Auto. This group takes the top spot because their actions cut a little too close to the bone. There's nothing supernatural about them. This isn't a cult worshipping something beyond the realm of understanding. They're aging baby boomers who believe subsequent generations are entirely responsible for the world's woes.
Kill him and make him pure.
And as such, they're killing, and possibly eating, human beings en masse for the good of mankind. To top off the creepiness, you soon realize that you've been actively helping them acquire new lost souls for their crusade. We've barely scratched the surface of some of the most horrifying cults in games. What are your favourite cults in video games you've played? Let us know in the comments below. As always, this has been Dash for Curse saying thanks for watching and enjoy the game.